First order of business, December 2017 Airport Commission meeting minutes approval.
Make a motion we approve the minutes of the last meeting as written. I didn't see any corrections we needed.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Item number 3, we got Bolton and Minnick, Salas Palmer, is it? And Melissa, correct? Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I know you already emailed out kind of a little update, but I got some hard copies here for you as well. It's a little simpler. Unless you get everybody else's.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commission, for letting me address you. I wasn't at the last meeting, but my name is Silas Palmer, Aviation Project Manager with Bolton and Mank. I've worked in aviation since I graduated college, so going on 12 years now. So excited about the opportunity to help you guys with your airport. I know you recently completed kind of a major construction project there with paving your runway and your parallel taxiway. And now you're looking at kind of doing some more development with your airport. So what's attached in the packet there is kind of a draft capital improvement program. As you're aware, every year MnDOT wants, the city to undertake the process of updating your CIP to kind of determine more immediate projects. Last year, they've wanted airports to start looking out at 20-year time period, but realistically, your next 5 years are more critical because those are projects that are more realistic. So based upon comments that Melissa and Jason brought back from your last airport board meeting, we kind of put this CIP together. It's kind of the third sheet, the second sheet in the packet there to kind of talk about your more immediate projects, kind of starting with state fiscal year 19, 20, 21, 22. And when it says, state fiscal year 19, the state's fiscal year kind of runs mid-year, so it's July 1st to June 30th of the following year. So when you see 19, it's a project that'll start in 2018, but it'll be funded with state fiscal year 19. So if that confuses you in terms of the calendar years, feel welcome to stop me at any time. But with that, there's kind of 4 projects we'd like to talk about more specifically. And with the first 2, I'd like to introduce Melissa to kind of address the commission about the obstruction lighting project and then the approach procedure survey.
Thanks, Alice. Well, over the last few weeks, we were reviewing your airport layout plan and looking at the power lines. And we don't think for the need right now that they're an obstruction. They wouldn't be an obstruction unless the runway was extended. So I wanted to discuss that with you and see if we could open communication with MnDOT to confirm that information and just make sure that there are obstructions that need to be removed right now. Otherwise, we can move on from that CIP item and cross that out.
I would concur that we work with them.
And who was it that brought it up? Do you remember, Rick?
I think it was an item that was on the original airport layout plan.
I think it was noted in the May inspection.
Yeah, the 5010, it was brought up in the 5010.
Okay.
So maybe with the elevation changes that have occurred, maybe that's a non-issue now.
Do you know if it was Rick or Kelly that came out and did your 5010 inspection?
Rick Bronig?
Right.
No, it was,
Or Rachel?
no, it wasn't Rachel. Kelly, I'm sorry, I don't know the names off the top of my head that were here.
Okay. Okay, well, I can check with
I
them.
can dig that up, but I don't have it right here.
Okay. Okay, I'll reach out to them and just talk to them about that, because I don't see them as being an obstruction at this time until the runway is extended.
Okay, terrific.
Okay?
Clarification.
Well, on the north end, it shouldn't, even if we extended it, it would be to the southeast, so.
Only to the south, correct?
Right.
Correct.
So it doesn't seem like that would make a difference.
Right. And the second item I wanted to talk about was the approach procedure survey piece. Usually in the past, what we've done to establish an approach at an airport is there's an online form that's filled out, and it just asks questions like what type of approach you're looking at, if it's on your airport layout plan, and what end you're looking at, and the minimums you're asking for. And then that goes to the local airport district office, and then they funnel it through the FAA to start working on approach procedure development. There's no cost at that time that we've had to initiate that procedure. So I wanted to talk to you about that and see if you wanted to start with the process that way before any funds are put into that type of a project either.
Can it start and just get the survey done for free and stop right there? Can it just be ended right there without any further cost at all?
Like, there's no survey that needs to be done at the initial startup of the approach procedure. They use the airport layout plan, and they use the recommendation from the city and from the airport's district office to start with the development of the procedure. And then FAA has a database where if they have any obstructions show up, they'll ask you about them, and then we can determine at that time if any survey would be needed or not. Sometimes there are trees that have been removed or shortened or aren't even an issue anymore because of the procedures that have changed and the way they write the procedures. So at that point, we would address any issues that they had. But at first, we could do this kind of initial submission form and see what comes back.
It sure seems like a no-brainer to me. As far as the minimums, and that'd be kind of a federal, they'd probably want us to be looking at that and determining that, or they want
They
us to
would, and
look at that
it's
too?
also based on how the runway's designed. So, to get 3/4 of minimums, 3/4 mile minimums are lower, you have to have a 1,000-foot primary surface, which we don't have here. But we could look at, a mile or anything in between, and they would help with that as well, based on the obstructions that they find or what they find when they're writing the procedure.
It'd also be a ceiling minimum to also.
Correct, yep. That they will establish.
Is there a cost associated with this review that you were talking?
Nope.
Okay,
I think we should be doing it then. That's,
I concur.
there's no
Absolutely.
reason not to.
So I can start that process if that's what you'd like. I would just need someone to contact if there were any questions that came up. So who would you like me to, or should I go through the city?
I think you could contact any one of us, really.
Okay.
We'll make contact with the rest and whatever.
Okay.
All depends on who's available that day,
Okay, I will do that and just let you know what comes back from FAA at that time.
So Chairman's Commission, as you look out here, the goal is to, get this CIP finalized for February 1. I think the idea that was discussed at the last commission meeting is that this will be put on the council's next workshop for discussion, and the commission will be invited to attend and discuss that. From a budget perspective, right now, and it sounds like the obstruction lighting might be removed, but you're looking at about $18,000 or so worth of match if the state were to provide grant awards for the infield drainage and the approach procedure survey, assuming that's ultimately where that goes. Right now, there's as of the end of the audit year for 2016, there was about $130,000 in the airport special revenue fund. We are just kind of finalizing 2017 in terms of activity. It doesn't appear as if there's anything that would cause any significant diminution of that fund balance based on operations in 2017. So you can kind of put that into the conversation. Typically what you'd like to see is 40 to 50% of annual expenses for fund balance. Our expenses have been about $100,000 a year, give or take, at the airport, and a lot of it is highly dependent on fuel consumption, but which revenues and expenses there tend to offset. But so I think you can look at it from that perspective. If you have, if you're looking at a target of, let's just say $50,000 of fund balance, just to sustain operations and have some flexibility, that's kind of the number you have to think about when you're looking at it. Aside from the CIP contemplated here, I would say the other two issues out there that are, in the equation for discussion. One would be is, of course, we have unknowns with the final reconciliation of the airport paving project. We still have an outstanding amount of about $400,000 there. And so as you talk to the council, that'll be something you want to engage with if they want to limit activity until that issue is resolved. We do have mediation scheduled for February 13th, and so we're continuing to have discussions there, but I can't honestly give you any specific time frame for when that issue will be resolved. And then the other is certainly, there's approximately $50,000 outstanding that could be paid down to the airport special revenue fund that's currently supported with a rent increase of $280. So, if you wanted to buy that down from that $130,000, that's certainly a discussion point for you as well. But you just have to prioritize your use of fund balance there and figure out what you think is best for the airport.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Thing of it is, there's a couple things on here that wouldn't cost the city anything either way, no matter what. Like the study she was just talking about, for instance. There's no cost there.
No, that's correct. I think assuming the obstruction lighting issue is not an issue, if you have to, do the more formalized approach procedure survey, that'd be $7,500 of local match, assuming 90% funding, which is where the state is at this point. And then I do think we'd want to, my recommendation to you would be to try to advance that infield drainage improvement project. Long term, that's probably an important thing for the airport. And then there is a local match there of $11,331.
Oh, I understand that. It's just the study itself is that she was just talking about. I think there's nothing wrong with getting that rolling.
Right.
It's no cost to us. Now, I understand that we need the infield drainage improvements probably ahead of that, but.
There was an item that I was recalling on the way today where we have an area for tie downs that's grass. So I think there's 6 separate tie downs that are opposite the fuel pumps and opposite the taxiway there that's grass. And we don't have anything in our CIP for that area. We know that we want to pave it at some point in time, but we don't have it accounted for. And I was thinking we should have it accounted for, and depending on the cost, maybe we should even consider doing something sooner rather than later. It can be problematic in the spring or in a wet time of the year to get aircraft in there, and then some aircraft just don't travel well over the grass. So I think we should at least account for it in the CIP, whether it becomes 019 or 020 or another year is a separate question.
And you don't think that was part of the runway expansion program, do you? I don't.
No.
No, it was not.
It was.
No, we did talk about it, Tim, as something needing to be done, but we hadn't ever accounted for it in the CIP. So I thought we should at least account for that.
Well, what it sounds to me like is that all this stuff is kind of a mute issue until this other stuff is resolved. That's what I'm hearing.
I think that ultimately depends on the position of the city council. I think they may, I think it depends on your discussion there. They may prioritize some of those other issues higher, ultimately you're talking about probably in a best case scenario in terms of fund balance available, $70,000 to $80,000. And that's obviously not going to resolve the approximately $400,000 that still is outstanding. And so I think that probably weighs into that conversation. The only other note I'd make as far as airport budget going forward is egg rent is kind of a diminishing commodity, and actually this last year we budgeted $29,000 approximately for egg rent. We actually only took in about $21,000. There was just a number of reductions that we saw. So from an operating perspective, that is a factor for you moving forward. And I can itemize those various areas that were reduced out on the egg lease, but ultimately it translated into about $8,000 less.
And that should stabilize over this next couple of years, I would think.
I would think so, and potentially even improve. A large area that was not accessible, of course, was the area north of the arrival departure building. I met with Chris Taylor last week, and he did indicate that the potential exists for him to kind of make his way through those woods, but it's something that they're continuing to explore. He thought that there might be some opportunity there. And then they didn't have the opportunity to farm the area south of the extension of 202nd there where the dirt pile was was they didn't have the opportunity to plant that, during the construction phase. He does anticipate that that will come back online next year.
That it will come back online?
Right.
So we still need to zero in on this CIP, and that was gonna be we're gonna have a separate meeting on that? You're thinking?
Well, the plan was to have, to prepare this so we can go to the workshop with the council. Is that correct, Aaron?
Yeah, that's correct. I think, if you guys have consensus on the CIP for submittal to MnDOT, and then I think it is going to that city council workshop. Originally, that was scheduled for the 15th of January, but with Martin Luther King Day being that day, right now it's on the calendar for the 29th. And that's just something we're gonna have to talk about in terms of, whether that's the day. The council will talk about that next week.
So the date for the workshop has not been set yet?
Well, as it is right now, it's set for the 29th of January, given
Okay.
the holiday on Monday, the 15th. But the council at their next meeting on the 8th will probably discuss if that's what they want to do or adjust that.
Well, it sounds to me like this whole thing's kind of a moot issue, and why would we even change what's presented here? I mean, to me, we have it in front of us. Nothing can happen until that workshop is done and find out what the consensus is gonna be there.
Well, you have to have some, if you're willing to forward this on to the council, that'd be the starting point if the group has consensus on that. And then from there, this has to be submitted prior to your next meeting. And so you'll be in a situation where, the council would likely approve this at their, last meeting in January, which is actually the 20th and ahead of when the workshop's scheduled. So we'll have to figure that out.
Well, let's look at this 2020. We've got the taxi lane and T-hanger site preparation and a 10-unit hangar. Do you want to expand a little bit on?
Yeah, sure. Kind of also included in your packet is kind of a hangar layout. An item that was mentioned at the last airport commission meeting was looking at potential expansion for additional either private hangars or a potential public or possibly a private T-hangar to that respect as well. So kind of what you see on the layout is your existing taxi lane kind of furthest to the south and the east, and then an additional taxi lane and two taxi lanes to kind of construct buildings off of. One of the comments that Mr. Ashbeck did email was, the separation that's shown between the private 4 hangars there. It's just for visual purposes was drawn in at 44, but it would have to meet the Forest Lake building code in terms of what your separation would have to be and whatever type of fire rated wall you would need for a certain separation. If it's 10-foot separation, it may not need a firewall or it may need a 1-hour wall. But the other item was to look at the potential for a T-hangar that was there. So kind of what you see as kind of item number 5 on the update is looking at, what your funding options are in particular for a T-hangar. The only funding option through the state for any potential type of hangar facility is a loan. So what the state could do is provide the city with a 20-year interest-free loan on 80% of the cost of the building itself. All the site preparation, including, foundations and up to the concrete floor, would be funded at the going rate for state grants, which at this point is 90-10. But then the erection of the building and what have you, they could provide a loan for. However, if you fund the T-hangar, I know there was discussion about potentially being a privately owned T-hangar there. The state would only participate in the construction cost for your taxi lane width to get there. They wouldn't pay for the apron, whether it be concrete or bituminous or any of the site work, or participate in a loan for the erection of the building.
Right. That's correct.
So you have options there in terms of if the city just wants to provide the infrastructure with taxi lanes for prospective pilots to construct their own facilities there, or if you want to look for more so towards a potential revenue generation source for you. Granted, there's a 20-year loan on the property, so you're thinking longer term than that, hoping to amortize your costs via leases for that period of time.
There's also a 20% upfront cost too.
Correct. So the 20% is upfront the state will provide 80% of it. So, you know, on the high side, what you see, depending on the size of the bay, you know, it's 60 to 70,000 per bay is what you're seeing for hangar cost. So it's, the capital costs are stiff up front for the city, knowing you have 20% down and then a loan for 20 years.
Personally, I don't think it'll happen. That's just my opinion. You know, that way, that direction.
Sure.
I appreciate the information, don't get me wrong.
No, it's providing you all the information so you can make the best decision. I mean, obviously, it's a recommendation from the commission here in terms of how you want to move forward. You know, the CIP shows it right now is, you know, looking at, you know, constructing, you know, your taxi lane and then looking at the hangar loan program. But that doesn't, you know, the CIP doesn't obligate you to these projects either. It just provides the state an idea of what you're proposing to do.
And at the same time, if we could choose to say it's going to be a T-hangar and request the assistance in building out the area, but we could turn it into land leases
Correct.
instead, just like we're considering for the existing area.
What you see in blue on this layout, that would always be funded with state funds. It's when you look at the green areas for the hangars, whichever direction they go. If they go private, then the state wouldn't participate in anything else. If they go public and you take advantage of the hangar loan program, they'll participate in everything to get you to that building.
Meaning the,
So the state will participate in your apron cost to get you from your taxi lane to the building, and they'll participate in your foundations and the concrete slab.
in a 90%?
90, well, the current rate is correct, 90%, 10% local share. And then they provide a loan for the building cost.
Itself.
Correct, yeah. You're mostly looking at a pre-engineered steel building here for that. So they'd participate in the loan for 80% of the cost of that.
So you've got $500,000, and now that would just for land improvement? Would that be that's just for both taxi lanes?
That's just the estimate that was carried over from the previous CIP. It's something that we haven't looked at specifically to come up with a revised cost estimate. That's just a conservative number to put in there.
I guess my concern is if we're moving the T-hangars down, you know, that land starts dropping off on that corner. Is there physically enough room to do it, or do we run into an issue where we're putting a pile more fill in there?
I can't speak for sure to that, not having seen the area in question myself. One of the comments that came up from the last meeting was there's wetlands in that area, so that's what we found, some information about wetlands, and it's kind of drawn on there. But I'm not surprised by your comment there, Tim, that the area there could drop off where you need quite a bit of fill to bring the area up.
Well, that's my major concern here. If we're looking at moving the T-hangars over, first of all, we gotta know if there's room to do it. I mean, that's my big concern here. I mean, we don't want to put in more hangars without having rental hangars, you know, available, use that property up, and now where do we put the T-hangars? I guess we gotta know that before we even
Sure.
kind of go forward here.
I know one of the comments in a discussion that was had with Aaron was potentially looking at other areas around the airfield where you could potentially look at expanding, you know, building areas. You know, currently your ALP shows construction of, you know, private and public hangars kind of south into the east, and that area has kind of been grown out per your airport layout plan. So it is something where we could potentially talk to the state about just doing a sheet update. It doesn't make sense to update your entire airport layout plan at this juncture if you're just looking at potentially other areas for building expansion. If this area in question is not feasible, or may be cost prohibitive if, like you're saying, the soils there are unsuitable and you're talking about excavating out quite a bit of saturated material, backfilling it with granular, it does get quite costly.
So in order for us to find that out, we're gonna end up spending some money then.
Correct, and it'd be a discussion with the state about just looking at one sheet update on your ALP rather than the whole package, so that greatly reduces the cost of it.
Aaron, what's happening with Lot 1 with Chris Nelson? Is there anything going on there?
Chairman's Commission, we've had some conversations, but it hasn't been that significant since the last meeting.
So has he actually taken a lease down on that lot?
There is, but there's a lot of variables, in play in terms of access to utilities and what some of those charges would be. I mean, so I think that none of those issues have been resolved at this point in time.
I guess my thought was, possibly we would, because there are no utilities up there, remove a T-hanger area up in that area also. Because we don't have utilities, we wouldn't need utilities on that for T-hangers.
Oh, boy,
Pardon?
it just doesn't seem right to have the T-hangers there when it really should be, that was kind of for a future, more of a commercial type hangar area. I'd hate to see the T-hangers go there. As far as finding out where that T-hanger, these measurements you got there, that's all it would take is just some simple measurements across there and find out where that bluff is and if it's an issue or not.
Correct.
It's a simple thing.
And that's not to say you couldn't alter the location of where you potentially look at a T-hanger, maybe not construct the furthest south taxi lane, construct one, provide an opportunity to construct off of both sides of that.
I think
My feeling is that I like the idea of having these extra pads here for the hangars, for the private hangars. And we could actually add one or two there, because of the space.
Correct, correct.
And it's no problem there. Because I think that the city building a T-hanger even on a interest-free loan is not going to happen. I just don't see it happening. Especially there's a 20% upfront cost that goes with it. So if somebody comes along, that wants to do it on a private, that'd be great, because then they'd have their money involved and the city would still be collecting the rent for the land and that kind of thing. But boy, the way things are going, I don't know how we could have a very big priority on that T-hanger. I just don't see it.
I did hear back from Justin, I think was his name, that was looking at trying to do a privately funded T-hanger, and he said it's not cost justified at this point in time, so.
Yeah.
I think we should at least understand if it dimensionally could handle the concept that you have on this piece of paper. The outstanding question would be what has to happen material-wise for that new location of a T-hanger.
I think it's just some simple measurements is all it would take.
Yeah.
The measurements are laid out on there, just add them up and go across it with a tape, but you'd find out in a big hurry.
And I think that would be good information to have when we go to the council workshop.
Yeah, we'll review the area in question to see if it's feasible to construct in the area that is shown on the layout.
I do support opening that area up for hangars. My question is north-facing doors versus south-facing doors, and then should they be smaller for more of an affordable hangar, something where people would have a smaller hangar where it's more affordable to them, so. But that's just things we can work out once we decide.
Yeah, because even at 60 by 60, you'd have room for one or two more hangars in there.
Oh, yeah, at least one, you'd have matching 5 on the other side. If you went 45 or 50,
Yeah.
you could get another one on top of that, so.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So 6 hangers.
Yeah, could put 5 at 60
45
wide, you could put 6 at 50 or 45. And now we're helping some people that, don't want the big hangar, but they want the hangar.
If it's not heated, do they still have to have that distance apart? You drew it with 44 feet apart.
That was just drawn for visual purpose to kind of expand the length of the taxi lane. It's
Right.
regardless if they're heated or not, it just comes down to the local building code. And
Yeah.
I don't know what Forest Lake separation distance is and what the firewall protection would need to be. Some say if you're 20-foot separation, there's no firewall required. Others, for however the separation is, there's a calculation that says you either need a 1 hour, 2 hour, and so on, the fire-rated wall from that point.
Chad is here, the building official, and even at 20 feet, you still need the firewall.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you can go down to 10 feet though, right, Chad?
But anything less than 30, you would need the wall.
Right, but you can
Even
go
if it's
down-
not heated.
So we can go down to 10 feet of separation.
You could, but I believe that would be a zoning thing after that.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know what zoning applies here. This is a
No, it's
little
just
bit
been
of
a,
an
it's the only thing,
unconventional
it's just been a
situation.
fire
so,
issue,
yeah.
just a fire code issue, as far as the spacing is concerned.
Yeah, you
So-
could go down to 0.
Yeah, we don't want to do that, but
No.
We've
You'd
been,
have to be over 30 to get less than 2 hours.
right. So they might as well go down to 10 feet or so of space.
Correct, yeah. If you know the wall is going to be required.
The point is that even at 60 feet there, you'd end up at least with one more space, which would be great.
But as long as, everyone is on board with whatever lot sizes you do decide to put in there, so you don't have, you can allow for as large as a 60 by 60, or if there's a common size that's more appropriate, then you can kind of plan your lots from there, so ensure there's sufficient space for whomever wants to build in those areas.
Well, the direction I'd like to have is, I'd like to learn the cost of that paving the area where we tie down aircraft,
Sure.
so we know how to factor that in as we move forward with the CIP. It'd be good information to have for the workshop, and I'd also like to know the dimensional feasibility of the concept that you have. So when we go to the workshop, and I think the CIP, the way it is right now, is fine. We go to the workshop, and we're gonna find out what juggling we have to do on what you propose, plus those two items that I just mentioned. That's my direction.
Yeah, what I would propose is kind of putting it into 3 separate projects, so you have one, kind of an apron expansion for your tie-down area as one project shown for state fiscal 20, and then another project for just constructing the taxi lanes only, and then a third project for showing the T-hanger constructed with hanger loan program. So that way, at least you show on there that it's a possibility, but the other possibility is just the city elects to construct the taxi lanes and then leave the areas for privates.
Okay. The automated weather observation system, AWAS, now that's something that MnDOT is going to provide, correct? And I don't know if we can get that.
It's 100% funded. Yeah, I suppose it depends on funding, whether the funding is available or not.
But I thought that we were too close to Anoka to get that.
Yeah, the last conversation was without having an instrument approach and being too close to Anoka, it was timed more with the instrument approach, GPS approach.
I wasn't part of that conversation, so I wasn't sure about that. But
Well, and that was brought up at the last meeting, and also there had been discussion last year that possibly with the skydive operation that they might put it out earlier. Again, those are conversations from airport commission meetings.
How about the Jet A fuel? I mean, is that something that we're going to need here? I don't really foresee it being something that we should even have on it.
That was put on with when we still had parachute operations here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's why we had that.
Yeah, we've got no jets that really are going to be coming in.
No, or even turboprops.
Turboprops, yeah. So I think we can definitely remove that.
I'm okay with that.
Would you like to remove it altogether, or just move it down into the future?
I really think we should move it down. I don't, there may not be aircraft on the field, but there may be aircraft that would come here and fuel up, including helicopters.
Sure.
Might be advisable to put it after 2027 with the runway extension. I mean,
Yeah.
seems like it maybe be more integrated there.
Sounds good.
Well, I would say we'd bring this to the workshop as is with those changes and discuss it then. And Aaron, you'll let us know when that workshop's going to be then.
Yes.
Thanks.
I'd make a motion to that effect then, if that was the case.
Say it again, Mr. Husnick.
That we present the CIP as presented with a couple minor changes that were made to it.
The CIP with
I'll second that.
changes.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Salas.
Well, thank you. One last thing, Aaron. If you could provide us with your login and password for the MnDOT site, we can go ahead and make these changes on your behalf as well.
All right, I think Rick
Yeah,
can provide that.
for you.
If you, we're willing to do it if you'd like us to, so.
I'm just thinking we should wait until the council.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
When the time comes.
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Alex.
you.
Okay, item number 4 on the agenda, we pretty much have gone over that, and we will at the workshop. Item number 5, Pappy's, I know they were out today and yesterday, were they?
Yeah, I got a text message from Lindsay at SEH, and she said that they had continued problems with the boards on the computers for the PAPIs, and their MnDOT is requesting new boards, so the flight check was canceled and will have to be rescheduled once the boards get installed again. So
Wonderful.
this is equipment that was purchased by MnDOT Aeronautics, and they're the ones, I mean, it's costs MnDOT Aeronautics as well as FAA money every time they have to come out and, you know, get it to work. And obviously, the contractor is there too, working with them, so.
And I do notice the runway end lights, the reels were flashing tonight.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
So I don't know if they adjusted the sensitivity on them again today or yesterday. I'll have to keep an eye on that. Item number 6, we've got fuel pricing on there. What is our fuel price right now, Rick?
Boy, I meant to look at it today and I didn't. Let's take a peek here. I did want to mention that from a level perspective, Dave said that those mechanical levels are not accurate. And he did say that the office here is keeping track of the quantity sold, and then they notify him to dip the tanks to confirm the level, and then he orders according to that. So I'll have the quantity, the pricing here in a second.
Okay, so we'll just,
417 was the last fuel I bought. I know that.
Yes, 417 is what's published.
so we just every meeting want to keep an eye on his prices or?
I was just, well, what I was thinking was just we'd be able to see it, you know, just how the prices changed over time, but we don't even have to do that.
Okay, let's, Chad, how about, you step up the podium and go over some fire suppression.
Yeah, Chairman's Commission, after the last meeting, I just thought it'd be helpful to have Chad attend. There's just some questions about when certain building code requirements trigger, and I know he did present you some information via email, and just thought it'd be helpful if he kind of came in and summarized, and then I guess more of an opportunity really for you to answer any, questions that you might have, so.
Good evening. As Aaron said, my name is Chad. I'm the building official. What I gave here is a little bit of a memo that kind of outlines some of the codes that are enforced for airport hangars. The code kind of talks about a couple pieces, both maximum fire areas and fire suppression. The fire suppression piece is a little bit easier. It's at 12,000 square feet. So anything over 12,000 square feet would need fire suppression. However, any building would need the maximum fire area 2-hour separated walls. So for most of the buildings that are out there now, and the new ones that I believe are going to be proposed, it'll probably be around 5,000 square feet, and you'll need a 2-hour separation.
That's pretty much
In
it.
the attic or in the building?
On the walls.
On the walls, that's been what happening on all those hangars though.
Most of them are under 2,000 or under 5,000 square feet.
Yeah, but we're still
But
putting firewalls in them.
the firewalls in that case are located near the property line or closer to the lot lines. So if the walls are located, exterior walls are located within 30 feet of the property line, they also need to be 2-hour walls.
So the back wall is not a firewall on these hangars, Sam?
The fronts and the backs are not.
Just the
It's
side
just the
walls?
two
So
sides.
that's basically what we've been doing.
Yeah.
That's basically what we've been doing.
Yeah, most of these hangars are what?
Okay, now, that brings up the question of a T hangar though. Because, but you can go up to 12,000 square feet
Without fire suppression.
without fire suppression, but each individual unit, would that need a firewall in between each unit then?
It would have to
inside?
be over 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
You might be able to fit 2 of them, it depends on the
So
configuration.
you could divide them up, and as long as it doesn't go over 5,000 square feet,
Yeah.
or at the 5,000 square foot mark, you could put a firewall.
Yep.
Okay. So this proposed area here is what, 60 by 264? Anybody got a,
I got a calculator
It'd
right.
be 60 by 200 would be 12,000 square feet.
yeah, by 200, so we're a little bit over there.
So that would both need separation and a fire suppression system, if you kept it at that
Even though
size.
it's a, yeah, so even though it's a T hangar, I mean, this gets to be kind of confusing. That's why I'm pounding your ear about this here, Chad, because, so in other words, it'd almost be better off to put up 2 buildings than with one big one.
Yeah,
Chad, when you're talking fire suppression, we're talking sprinkler system, correct?
correct.
I mean, that's our only options out there?
See, the problem with the T-hangers, a lot of them are, they're just cold hangers, you know, so then you gotta put in that dry system, or there has to be
Yeah.
heated room for it or whatever. So 12,000 square feet's the magic number.
Well, that definitely clears up some square footage wise. I mean, it's, and what was, Chad was talking, Nelson was talking 7,000 square feet or something?
One time there was I think there was a 5,000 number being thrown around too, 5,000 square
I
feet.
think he evolved to multiple buildings as well in his discussion, I think.
But now when you get into doing painting or some other things in there, that's where it really, painting, mechanical works, that's when things really change on the,
Yeah, I have that on the list too. A couple of those that were listed in the code book, I listed them on here as well. But that stuff involves hazardous materials, and that will change the fire suppression requirement as well.
So I was writing something down when you were talking about T-hangers and the size of them. If for some reason, if the T-hanger was 14,000 square feet total, you can't build one building with 2 fire-rated walls sectioning off each section so that it's less than?
they've got to be
You
more
would-
than 5,000 square feet.
You would have to do that anyway, but you would also have to provide fire suppression. And if it's over 14, if it's
If it's over
14,000 square feet,
12,000,
if it's
yeah.
over 12,000.
Okay. Okay.
And I believe last month there was some reference to, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong here, but you guys will probably recall, where maybe at a different airport, there was the opportunity for them to not put in fire suppression over the 12,000 square feet or something like that. Does that sound right?
Yes, it is.
But I think as we discussed that further, related to the type of construction, Chad, do you recall that? Was it like pole building construction versus steel or something?
Yeah, I think it would have to, the type of construction would definitely help you out in the 2-hour separation, but it won't help you out in the overall square footage.
Chad, how about if somebody wants to use a spray foam in one of these hangers, is that allowable or not? Is it a fire issue?
To protect the structure?
No, yeah, well, for insulating, you know, they want to spray foam it, that'd have to be on the inside of your firewall, I'm gonna guess. Or else, can you use it? Because, is it flammable? I don't know.
Yeah, for an insulation material?
Right.
Yes, it's flammable. It would need to be covered up by some sort of non-combustible material.
So sheetrock or steel or,
Yes. The steel by itself probably wouldn't work because that will conduct the heat. It would have to be a gypboard type of material.
so probably what you'd do is you'd tin the outside of the building, you'd spray foam it, and then 2 layers of your firewall inside of that? Mm-hmm. What you'd do? That'd protect it from burning from the inside out then.
Yep.
So a guy could get by with.
Yeah, what the existing hangars utilize is an alternate design. So that's kind of submitted for each one of those firewalls. Generally with the firewall, a 2-hour firewall of that nature, you're usually protecting it from both sides. But it's been an accepted practice to accept an alternate design for all the protection to either be on the inside or the outside. So that's where you get under the 2 layers of gyp on the inside.
Okay.
Usually it would be 1 on the inside, 1 on the outside, and then your insulation material in between.
Would that be allowable with the foam, spray foam too?
Yep,
Oh, sure.
yep.
At least in the residential it would be, I know.
Okay, any other questions for?
If you break the thing up to 2 buildings, how far do the 2 buildings have to be apart if you got the firewalls on both of them?
They wouldn't have to be any more than 10 feet or less.
Yeah, you would just need firewalls at the end of them too.
Hey, you're just making two separate buildings, yeah. The biggest issue with a T-hanger is you lose that extra space in there when you do that, you know, but, anyways.
I think, Chad, at previous meetings, there's been discussions on the requirement for bathrooms. Can you just
thank you.
speak to that issue?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. Each building would require its own accessible bathroom. So if you did one bathroom or one building, you can include one accessible bathroom in there. There is a code provision for having a accessible bathroom on site. I know that's been discussed for quite a few submissions for hangars, but it has to be within 500 feet of that accessible bathroom, and it has to be on an accessible route. So the last couple submissions that I've had for permits, it's been beyond that 500 feet. I think all of these new buildings would be beyond that 500 feet as well.
So T-hanger will have a bathroom in it. You could do
That's-
2 buildings with one bathroom.
Yeah, see, and that part of the airport layout plan, that never was part of the layout plan.
Yeah,
ever.
correct. Yeah,
Because
correct.
T-hangers were never,
Yeah.
they were just, a lot of times, open cold storage buildings, that's what they were. So I don't know, where did this stuff change? I mean, it just, I don't know how long this has been, but, because it wasn't involved in it, but,
So now that's gonna bring some water and sewer up to, right up to those T-hangers too.
That's it.
But-
well, on this particular case, you just have the water and sewer down one lane and then feed it from both sides.
Right.
You know. But that really that just raises the cost even more and makes it even less feasible.
Okay, any other questions for Chad?
Well, at one time, early on in the building cycle of the hangars, it was my understanding that a cold storage hangar would be possible without
Without a bathroom.
without hooking up to utilities.
Right.
So,
And I think if it was within the 500 feet and on an accessible route, it would be feasible.
okay.
And you're thinking that there aren't any hangars out there that are within 500 feet?
No, I forget where the last one was, but that was pretty close, and that was outside the 500 feet.
Because I know which one you're talking about.
That one was outside the 500 feet,
It is, huh?
yeah, on an accessible route. So you can't just go between the buildings, the existing hangar buildings, and get over to that.
Oh, yeah,
You'd have
walk on
to,
the
you'd have to put a wheelchair down there, essentially.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have to say the rest of these, you know, are all reasonable. I don't have any of this stuff going on.
Chad, if the building code were to change, and that's crazy for me to say, I'm almost embarrassed to say that, because Sam knows, forgotten more about building than I'll ever know in my lifetime. But we're not the only airport in the state of Minnesota. There are other airports that are existing or suffering, depending on how you look at it, under this same building code, under these same rules. And they have the same problems that we do. I was tempted to ask Silas if he knows of any other T-hanger, you know. If you build a T-hanger here and we can't do it because we have to have a heated bathroom in it, that's a problem. But it's also the same problem at Long Prairie or, you know, Le Sueur or Sauk Center or any place that wants to build a T-hanger project. And that is a joint communal concern that could be brought somewhere to somebody makes a decision and say, look, we just want a big old shed. That's all we want.
It was my understanding that that Minnesota adopted the International Building Control Standards back when this was discussed early on, and that the legislature mandated the 7-county metro area comply, but outlying counties didn't have as strict guidelines for their buildings, hangars.
There's some counties and some municipalities that don't enforce the building code, that haven't adopted the building code.
Correct, haven't adopted.
Okay.
Enforcement and adoption are two different things.
Okay.
Yep.
And just for reference, because this question comes up at times, once you have adopted the building code, you cannot unadopt the building code. Basically, you're with it perpetually. And it's an important thing from an overall community perspective, for our insurance ratings and things like that. I mean, each community is rated for, homeowners premiums and things like that. And having the building code adopted is a fairly significant factor in that.
Okay.
Well, in the case of a T-hanger, I think that the better alternative would be to build a separate, completely separate little public building. Off one end or something. Completely
Separate bathroom building.
So everybody has access to it.
Yeah, but you can put one, in one of the T-hangers, you can put a bathroom in it.
In the T corner,
But then you're opening your private area to public use. And
Oh, I
it's,
see.
I wouldn't want my airplane in there in a case like that.
You could have an outdoor.
Yeah, you'd have to build some kind of a warmed building. It's not that big a deal. As long as it's
Is it-
accessible and.
Is it portable? Does it have to be built in? Could it just be portable, a porta potty?
I want to say no, but I don't know for sure.
I mean, they make handicap accessible porta potties too.
I would think so too. But we're gonna find those things out because those are all factors on trying to get this thing to work,
Does the commission have a sense of, if you're doing a T-hanger, what a supportable rent level is, as people look at this?
That's, yeah.
I mean, I think you can look at it a lot of ways, in terms of you can back your costs in, and I just did really quick Robbinsdale Cooper math, if you're amortizing this thing out over 10 years and you assume full occupancy, which you can't necessarily assume, but, you'd need, and I think if you're building this on your own, you'd look in that 10 to 15 year period in terms of what you're gonna recover, even though you have longer loan amortizations with the state and things like that. You'd need to be charging about $580 a month.
Yeah, it's not feasible.
And I don't know if that's
No.
probably not and again, you can extend that amortization out, but that probably is not what people are charging. I just didn't know if you folks had a sense of, what was being charged out there, what's supportable from a rent perspective.
I know that was a little bit that I looked into it wasn't, the math didn't work. Because to charge more than a couple $100 or $250 a month for a hanger.
That's a lot. $250 is a lot.
Yeah.
I'm charging less than $100 in New Richmond right now.
So it's,
That's why the T-hanger thing is really a tough deal, especially with all the new regulations and. But Chad, thanks for the information, because I was gonna actually bust into your office and ask you these very same questions.
Yeah, you could do that anyway.
Yeah, you saved the day though, so.
But the outlying issue still is the porta potty. You don't know. Can you get back to Mr. Husnick, who will then forward it to the rest of us on
I
that?
certainly can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you,
That
Chad.
is a big
Thank
deal.
you.
Even with a little hairdryer in
Yeah,
it.
thanks, Chad.
Thanks, Chad. Okay, anybody from the floor?
Connor, I just have one quick item here too.
Go ahead.
Dan, maybe you can just pass those out. You don't have to really discuss this or make any decisions on this evening, but one thing you will have to discuss in February or March, we're in that kind of every other year period of rent adjustment for the ground leases. And so you'll need to formulate a recommendation to the city council. We did have a rent survey prepared, and these obviously for aviation are difficult, just because it's not really probably dissimilar to what would I charge to rent a house on Forest Lake versus a house in, name the neighborhood in Forest Lake. I mean, there's gonna be differentials based on amenities available and the type of space and so on. So what was done though is we looked at some non-metro area airports, tried to normalize it based on a 7,200 square foot hangar, which is what we do here. Of course, others may do it otherwise, but just to kind of do apples to apples, we did look at it.
Excuse me, Aaron, you mean 7,200 lot size?
Yeah, lot size of 7,200 square feet, so, excuse me on that. And we just looked at some of these different runways, so we did give you a hard copy of this. All these are hard surface. Some are attended, some are unattended. As you know, there's different instrumentation available at each of these. And you can see there's a range, obviously. Buffalo is, about $1,500. Cambridge and Princeton, a little bit less than that. Anoka, I wouldn't say that's a good comparable. And that's a MAC airport, a reliever airport, lots of different things there. I'd say Lake Elmo and South St. Paul are a little more comparable, although Lake Elmo is a MAC airport. South St. Paul is a municipal metro area airport, not totally dissimilar to Forest Lake. Our current rent is about $1,072, again, somewhat dependent on lot size. And then just because we are sort of in the range of Wisconsin, we did pull New Richmond's. They're actually based on a 6,400 square foot lot. So their rent generally is $6,400, and we were trying to get Osceola's information as well, but just never seemed to be able to get that from them. So you can look at this, but again, you don't really need to figure anything out in terms of a recommendation to the council. I think it's March is the window in which discussion happens on the ground lease. So
Is this December 2017 information?
Dan, when was this pulled together? This is 6 months ago, maybe, just give or take.
Within
Summer of 2017.
17, yeah, actually.
Yeah, last summer. We
Last summer.
had an intern, I think, that did the bulk of the gathering on it.
Thank you.
Why am I looking at the, it says the non-commercial price per square foot at Anoka is higher than the commercial? There's a couple other ones like that too.
So the non-commercial rated Anoka is less. Yeah, I honestly don't know. It may be structured in a way to incentivize, fixed base operators or commercial
That-
operations.
That doesn't seem right.
That's not right.
But we can look into that.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah. And there's a couple other ones like that too, Lake Elmo.
Maybe they're swapped around.
I'm gonna find out, I got a couple friends over at Lake Elmo too, I'm gonna find out exactly what they're doing over there.
The airport manager, when he sent them to me, those are the rates that he sent for non-commercial. He could have switched them around, but those were the 64 cents for, and 47 cents for non-commercial, and then commercial is 20, or .242 and 212, so
Yeah.
he may have swapped them.
Yeah, he must
But that's the information I received from them when the request went out.
It looks like Anoka, Lake Elmo, and South St. Paul all might have been. No, I guess South St. Paul is in there now. Okay. Very good.
We can clarify that for sure.
Okay. Who was, who from Jim you had? Something you want to add here?
The information listed on here for non-commercial at Anoka, 62 cents a square foot, does sound about right. When I inquired about purchasing hangars there, that's about where MAC was. I can't speak to the commercial rates, but for the non-commercial, that's what they were telling me. And they crank it up, a few cents every year, whether you need it or not. They're on a fixed schedule of they bump their rate every year regardless. They can tell you what it'll cost you to have land there 10 years from now, and it bumps up some amount every year. But 62 cents sounds about right, but it may be per square foot of hangar rather than per square foot of lot, so I don't know if it's been normalized for that. Correct. But I do remember hearing those numbers. They were like 58 or 62 in the past year. Just a reminder, if we get more snow, to send the plows to the north end of the airport. The other day, I was able to get up the driveway in the north end, but it had not been plowed. It's only been a, inch or two of snow or whatever, small amount up there. When we get more snow, they'll have to open up the driveway there, along with the ramp that takes you from the taxiway to the hangars, and of course, around the hangars like usual. But it didn't appear that any of that had been done yet this year.
Well, there's quite a few, there was about a week and a half or 2 weeks, there was no plowing really in the taxiways out there, so
Yeah.
it was all around, north and south end.
Okay, Well, anyway, just a reminder. When we spoke about getting a new roof on the Hangar Echo, that had been mentioned for being in mid-January. If I could get a couple days' notice, when you hear when that may actually be occurring, I'd be appreciative. I'd like to pull my airplane out of there, less likely to get a hammer dropped off the rafter onto my airplane wing if it's not in the hangar. So I'd be happy to pull my plane out. Gives them a little bit more room. I got a lot of stuff under the wings anyway, but that would give a little more room, and I'd like to get my aircraft out. I know others in Hangar Echo have mentioned a similar interest in being given a little notice and would like to get their planes out before they re-roof. You had mentioned earlier about GPS approaches. Another topic, when you do get in an approach, recognize one change is that the floor of the Class Echo, which is currently 1,200 feet AGL over the airport, will be going down to 700 feet AGL with the installation of any approach. So for those who might choose to try to operate right at minimums and work within Class Gulf airspace, for instance, coming in and utilizing the ILS approach, which will get them a lot lower minimums into Anoka, and then flying up the freeway into Forest Lake, those minimums will be reduced to be legal doing that sort of a run. Anyway, a note about GPS approaches. Next topic about parking. With the Super Bowl coming up, I don't know if the city has any interest in trying to invite pilots of general aviation aircraft to come to Forest Lake and park. They had talked about at one time, a few months ago, I was speaking to some of the folks from Flying Cloud. They were planning to close down an entire taxiway and turn it into a parking lot. And they were talking about thousands of dollars per day to park jet aircraft. Of course, we're not going to be getting any Gulfstream 450s into Forest Lake. But from a general aviation standpoint, if we were to go to some websites, there's a Super Bowl website that exists out there that the FAA has now, and there may be others, but it might be an opportunity to welcome other pilots to the Forest Lake Airport and perhaps buy some fuel while they're here. It might be an opportunity to make $10 a night for parking or whatever we wanted to do, but anyway, you might consider whether you want to put some effort into inviting general aviation to the fine Forest Lake Airport. Next topic, they had also mentioned tonight about PAPIs being turned on. A couple things that are possibilities for those. You may be adjusting sensitivity, I understand that. But if an aircraft is coming from kind of the northwest and doing an overflight, and they're coming in to South St. Paul, they work our frequency, and they may be at an altitude high enough where it would still reach our airport. And certainly I've been in times where I've been in the pattern and I've heard some of the private jet traffic coming in at higher altitudes up to Brainerd. I often hear them contacting North Point, the FBO up there for fuel. So their radios on common traffic easily reach Forest Lake. So it could be that our jets going into Brainerd or overflight traffic coming into South St. Paul, either of those could be kicking your PAPIs on. That's a possible explanation of why you saw them on tonight.
Yeah, but typically you keying the mic 7 times, to get them activated.
Yep, I'm aware that's how you get them on high. Yep.
Right, but just regular communications, I don't think would do that.
Yeah. So anyway, just a couple thoughts. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you,
Hey,
Jim.
Jim, when I was up flying on Saturday, I saw that the area was plowed
Oh, they did?
not this last Saturday, the Saturday before.
Okay, because I was out just a few days ago, and
And it wasn't.
it was snowy going up the hill by the old bungalow.
I'm sorry, it wasn't this Saturday.
Yep, and I was able to make it through with my car, so it's not that big a deal. Just wanted to make a reminder.
Thank you, Jim. Rick, have you gotten any calls at all on people wanting to attend the Super Bowl?
No, I've not received any calls for that at all.
So we haven't heard anything there at all yet. Okay.
I read an article, they're expecting 1,600 jets coming into the Twin City area that they need parking for. We of course can't accommodate that, but they were talking about Minneapolis and Anoka and several other bigger airports are going to be jammed up. I would think there'd be about smaller airplanes with that too, but a lot of air travel.
Okay.
Have to have somebody there to collect the money.
Let's see if we get anybody first. Ben, do you have anything you want to?
Actually, I interested for Ed. He had a death in his family, so.
Oh, boy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other orders of business?
Yeah, it's always been tradition to switch the chairmanship in January, and I think it's time. It's been overdue, and so we need to decide. I think Don is actually next in line. That's what we've done it traditionally, so we need to do that, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. And seeing you were here, Ben, is there going to be any changes on the council this year, or is it going to remain as is, or? I guess we need to know what changes are going to happen before we start electing new
We can
offices.
talk to that as a council, because we did amend policy temporarily, but it hasn't been a decision that none of us have voted on for permanent change. So with the conflict of having two council members on the board right at the moment, that's a discussion we need to have here.
That shouldn't affect the chairmanship though, Ben. I mean, it's always been something everybody just kind of took their turn.
Well,
And Don's actually next in line, so it's simple as that.
What I recall is that we did it in January or February, but it was always done after the appointments, the reappointments or appointments.
Is there reappointments happening or not?
So my question is if sometimes those appointments and reappointments happen in December and sometimes in January, so.
Yeah, but he's not one of them. His term is another year.
Tim and
Me.
Sam are the only two that are up right now.
That's
correct?
right.
And I was planning on reappointing Tim if he wants the position we got.
I'm interested in staying on, yes.
And so then it's just a matter of determining if, we're gonna have two council members stay on the board or not yet. And,
But it still shouldn't matter about as far as rotating the chairmanship.
Is that a motion? Is that a motion to make Don the chair of the
Absolutely.
airport commission?
Yep, that's my motion.
We have a second? Or do we want to wait till just table it till we've got all new people on the?
Well, Don, you're more than welcome to second the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye.
You can vote too, Don.
You can vote, so.
Aye.
So motions does not carry.
Mr. Shipp is confused. He said aye, but I don't know that he knew that he was voting against himself.
Oh, at least not.
He's not, right? But you said opposed. You said opposed. And then he said aye. So then you said that the motion did not pass. Well, the way I heard it, there's 2 aye votes in favor of this, and there are no votes against it. Is that what I'm saying?
That's what I'm hearing.
Rick, did you vote for?
I haven't voted.
He has not voted.
It's always been the policy of this airport commission to every couple of years rotate that chairmanship. And it has been long overdue. You've been on there 4 years.
And I have no problem with changing the seat, providing we've got the council in place that's gonna be there.
What's that got to do with it? He's here regardless.
Well, we've always waited until after the appointments have been made. So that's why I've been having a hard time with the motion, so.
There's always an excuse for not changing it.
No,
Always a reason.
no, that's-
And it's always been, we've always done it. Always.
We have always done it once the appointment's been made. That's my recollection.
What does the
And
appointment have to
I'm
do
fine
with
if somebody wants to prove me wrong, and then we'll take care of it in February.
But what does the appointment have to do with it?
I'm
I'm
just,
probably the only one that's gonna be reappointed or changed.
you believe firmly in your mind that we always did it in January. I disagree with that. I firmly, in my mind, believe that we've done it after appointments have been made. Knowing that I haven't put my vote in for that motion, I will vote to not, I'll vote against the motion that was presented.
Unbelievable.
2 for 2 motion does not carry.
Of course not.
Okay, I will make,
I'm not sure why you guys think you own the airport, but I'm tired of it.
Well, I don't think you own it either, Sam.
I don't, and
I will make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
I know that.
I'll second that motion.
all in favor? Aye?
I don't know when we're gonna start doing this stuff the right way for this city. Start working for the city.